Hey guys, Cready here. Back in June of this year, I made a video talking about new balloon possibilities for the 100th Macy's Parade. And while there are a lot of possibilities for new balloons for the 100th Macy's Parade, it also made me realize how many possibilities for new floats there are in my all-time favorite parade, the Toronto Santa Claus Parade. So I made this video where I will be going over possibilities for new floats in the 2026 Santa Claus Parade and giving my thoughts and opinions, in my personal opinion of course, on whether I can see them being represented in the 2026 parade or not. Keep in mind that this is not official or confirmed information about the 2026 Santa Claus Parade because I really don't know anything about what they're actually planning for this year's parade, and these are not requests for the parade staff. These are just predictions and guesses in my personal opinion and my opinion only. With that out of the way, let's begin. So I will be splitting each of these possibilities up into three different categories. Possibilities for returning companies, possibilities for new companies, and possibilities for licensed floats. I'm going to start with possibilities for returning companies. These are mainstay companies that could possibly get a new float that could replace their current float, along with companies that haven't been in the parade in a while that have a likely chance of coming back. Let's begin this section with the possibility of a new float from 98.1 CHFI. CHFI's current float has been in every parade since 2019, and I've noticed that it's aging a lot during its past couple appearances, especially in 2025, so there's a possibility that we could get a new float from them this year. If they get a new float, of course it'll be music themed, but I don't know if they're gonna stick to the branding or go with something original. Personally, I'd like to see more original ideas in the parade because I feel like there hasn't been a lot of original floats lately, and I think it would be nice to see something original in the parade again. Next is a new LEGO float. Now I know what you're thinking. Creaty, LEGO already has two floats in the parade. They don't need any more floats because two is enough. But what if LEGO were to retire one of their floats and put a new float in its place? By the looks of things, it seems like we'll be getting a different LEGO theme in the parade every year. In 2023, we got a normal LEGO float. In 2024, we got a LEGO Star Wars float. And in 2025, we got a LEGO Friends float. But what if they added another one this year? If LEGO gets a new float, there's so many themes they could use this time, but in my opinion, the most likely theme to be represented in the parade next is LEGO Harry Potter. This would make so much sense. Harry Potter is one of the most popular media franchises in the world. LEGO Harry Potter is one of the most popular LEGO themes, and the franchise has two big anniversaries. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the LEGO Harry Potter line, and next year marks the original franchise's 30th anniversary. So because of this, I think a LEGO Harry Potter float could have a high chance of appearing this year. And if it were to happen, I bet it would be one of the most popular floats of the parade because of how big of a franchise Harry Potter is and how popular it is around the world. Everyone would love to see a LEGO Harry Potter float, and I think this idea is possible. I think this has a good chance of happening. Okay, this has to happen at some point. It's a new Blue Jays float. Last year, the parade team made a Blue Jays float, and they had it all ready to go for when the Blue Jays would win the World Series, but then they lost to the Dodgers in Game 7, which caused them to scrap the float altogether. I still think a new Blue Jays float could happen because it's their 50th season and they're going all out. Plus, the Blue Jays and Say TV are both owned by Rogers, so that could be a Rogers connection. I think if there would be a float celebrating the Blue Jays' 50th season, they could recreate iconic moments in Blue Jays history from over the years, like Joe Carter touching all the bases, Jose Bautista's bat flip, Dave Winfield's double, and even some recent moments like the Springer Dinger. Of course, they could also bring back all of the classic mascots from over the years who have made a lot of appearances at home games this season, and just like 2015, they could have some current Blue Jays players ride on the float. I think the ones that would enjoy riding on a new Blue Jays float the most are Ernie Clement and Miles Straw. They're both fun guys, and I think both of them would have so much fun if they were in the parade. Just having Ernie appear by himself would also work. Ernie wouldn't have to travel far either because he lives in Rochester, New York, which is close to Buffalo. I really hope the Blue Jays get represented in the parade again, and I think a float celebrating their 50th anniversary has a very likely chance of happening. Go Transit is a transport sponsor of the parade, but what if they had their own float in the parade? I think this could work. It seems like a very likely possibility. There's a lot of things they could do with a Go Transit float. For one, they could fill it with small toy trains circling around Christmas trees, which would look really nice, and it seems like a very likely possibility. I think it makes a lot of sense for Go Transit to have its own float in the parade, and I think this possibility is very likely, and I would love to see it in the parade. How about a float celebrating the 50th anniversary of the CN Tower? I think this idea is plausible. The CN Tower is one of Toronto's most iconic landmarks, and it's usually one of the first things that comes to mind when people think of Toronto. So why not have a float in the parade celebrating its 50th anniversary? The height of the float would have to be reduced, though, because the floats can't be taller than 21 meters. But I'm sure that if this idea were to happen, they would find a way to make something work. But I don't know if this idea will happen or not, but it would be cool if it did. Next is any of the 5 major Canadian banks, also known as the Big Five. These include the Royal Bank of Canada, the Toronto Dominion Bank, the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, Scotiabank, and the Bank of Montreal. The Royal Bank of Canada was in the parade from 1991 to the mid to late 2000s and 2017 to 2019 and 2022 as the Royal Bank of Canada, and they were also one of the original sponsors from 1982 to 1990 as RBC Dominion Securities, formerly known as Dominion Securities Pitfield from 1982 to 1985, and just Dominion Securities in 1986. The Toronto Dominion Bank, more commonly known as TD Bank, appeared in the parade from 2017 to 2022. The Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, more commonly known as CIBC, has made a few on and off appearances in the 2010s and 2020s. Scotiabank has been in the parade a few times from 2011 to 2014, 2017 to 2020, and 2022, and the Bank of Montreal, or BMO, has been in the parade in the late 2010s and early 2020s, but they only had one float that made 2 appearances in 2018 and 2019. I think either one of these banks could be in the 2026 parade, but I don't know which one. Coincidentally, the 2019 parade featured floats from all 5 of these banks, but I don't know if that'll happen again or not, because if they were all in it again, the parade would have too many bank sponsors, so they would probably have to narrow it down to just 2. I think the most likely banks to get floats in the 2026 parade are RBC and TD. RBC has the longest history, with the parade dating back to 1982 as one of the original sponsors of the 1982 parade, and TD does a lot of advertising everywhere. I see TD's commercials in a lot of commercial breaks. To me, TD and RBC make the most sense, and I think both of them have the best shot at being in the 2026 parade. It would be their first appearance for both of them since 2022. Next, I'm surprised we haven't seen Walmart get a float in the parade in a while. Maybe we could get a Walmart float in this year's parade, especially because of how much advertising they've done during the holiday since 2020. I remember watching videos on YouTube about the Santa Claus Parade last November, and I remember getting countless Christmas ads from Walmart. I kept getting so many Walmart ads to the point where I had to take a break from watching Christmas-related YouTube videos for a while because of all the Walmart ads that were constantly being shoved all over my face. Also, have you seen how busy Walmart gets every single day, especially during the holidays? I don't go to Walmart a lot, but my parents always tell me the stores are always super crowded and packed with so many people, and the parking lots are living nightmares. But because of how popular Walmart is with the public and the amount of advertising they do during the holidays, I think a Walmart float makes a lot of sense. Of course, it would have to be Christmas themed, and maybe it could feature their teddy, depending on if Walmart still uses them in their holiday promotions or not. I think Walmart has a likely chance of coming back, and even though I still probably won't go to any Walmarts because of my personal experiences, it would still be nice to see them in the parade again. Now, this next idea isn't necessarily a company, but I still wanted to put it in this category because it counts as something that could potentially make a return to the parade. At first, this might seem impossible, but the team has done this in the past, and it could still work if they did this again today. What if they made recreations of classic floats from past decades to make older spectators feel nostalgic? It may not make sense at first, but it can be done. Nostalgia bait is a marketing strategy that is very common in television, movies, music, video games, and pretty much any other form of media, especially in this day and age. And the way this strategy works is by bringing back familiar characters, settings, styles, or ideas from the past to make money by triggering fond memories, and this strategy works every time. Companies, studios, and music artists use nostalgia bait strategies frequently because people feel comfort and warmth from things they loved in their youth, and seeing a fond memory from their past could take them back to when they were kids. Then, that same memory is passed on to their kids. It could excite the younger generation while also bringing older generations back to a simpler time. Nostalgia bait always works. Whether the finished product is a faithful recreation or it ends up being not very good, it still makes boatloads of money either way. The best example of this is Disney's live-action remakes. The Lion King remake disappointed a lot of fans and received mixed reviews from critics, but it still managed to attract its audience and bring a feeling of nostalgia to those who grew up with the original 1994 animated film. Even with mixed reviews, it still made $1 billion at the box office, making it one of the highest grossing movies of 2019 and the fourth highest grossing animated movie of all time as of 2026. Nobody liked the Lilo and Stitch remake either, but it still managed to make $1 billion in the box office, which made it the highest grossing live-action animated movie of all time, and now Disney is currently making a sequel to the live-action remake, which is set to release in 2028. That's how big of an effect nostalgia can have on the industry, and it's used by so many companies and studios. Even Spirit Halloween is using this method by remaking their most popular animatronics of past seasons. Maybe one way they could attract older spectators and longtime fans like me is by recreating floats from the past and bringing back memories for older spectators, while also introducing them to the younger generations of today. Remakes and reboots always do well in mainstream culture, and I can see the parade team following this trend and remaking fan-favorite floats from past decades. There are so many floats they could go with, like Gordon the Gorilla from 1990, Special Delivery from 1992, the Musical Mice from 1986, the Ski Lodge from 1967. There's so many floats that could work. The parade has done this a few times in the past. They have recreated the Farmer and the Dell float from 1951 twice in 1991 and 2012. They made the original Sounds of Summer sketch from 1968 a real float in 1997. And they also recreated a lot of floats from the past in 2004 as part of the celebration of the 100th parade. From reusing parts from 1987's Queen of Hearts float, to a remake of Santa's Mailbox from 1968, to reconstructing the aforementioned Ski Lodge float from 1967, to bringing back the classic 1930s Mother Goose. So they have used the nostalgia method in the past, and it's worked, and I think it could still work today. They could take any float they've made in the 2010s, 2000s, 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, or even as far back as the 50s, 40s, or even the 30s, and remake them from scratch, or reconstruct them using pieces from the original floats they still have saved. Remaking past floats will be a great way of unlocking memories for older spectators by visually asking them, "Hey, remember that float from the 90s? Hey, remember that float from the 80s? Hey, remember that float from the 2000s? We brought all of those floats back for you to reminisce on the parades of your childhoods." Even the self-propelled floats can still be remade on the basis of the modern floats. They could take the Dalton School float, remove the owl and the other scenery pieces on the float, sculpt a new version of Gordon the Gorilla that fits the length of that float, place Gordon on the float, add some extra bathroom-themed scenery pieces, and voila! And it doesn't have to be just small floats. They could even recreate classic floats on the big floats too, or include elements of those floats as references to the past floats they allude to. The latter strategy could even work on branded floats. For example, what if they added a replica of the Going South plane from 1991 with the two ducks driving the sentient cartoony plane to the Billy Bishop Airport float? It doesn't have to be a one-to-one recreation of the original float it's based on, but regardless of whether the quality is good or bad, it'll still make lots of money. I feel like this is a very likely possibility, and I think this could happen. Since everyone is making profits off of nostalgia, I think this could be a common trend in parades, and profiting off nostalgia always makes lots of money, so I think this could work, and I think this possibility has a very likely chance of happening. Next is Canada's Wonderland. They've only been gone for a year, and I already miss seeing their float in the parade. Thanks a lot, Six Flags. I miss the days when Canada's Wonderland would actually promote their attractions and events outside the park when Cedar Fair was in charge. Now, ever since the Six Flags merger in 2024, the company cares more about saving money rather than promoting, because Six Flags thinks they don't need the float in the parade anymore because they think consumers will just already know about Winterfest and just go anyways. Additionally, Six Flags is an American chain, which means they're all about America first, and the only parks in their chain they care to advertise are the American parks, including but not limited to Cedar Point, Six Flags Magic Mountain, Six Flags Great Adventure, and Kings Island, which take up 85% of the chain. It's sad that they only prioritize the American parks and not give my home park the same treatment anymore. Clearly, Six Flags doesn't know how packed Wonderland is every single day, especially during the summer. Hopefully the parade team can find a way to keep Canada's Wonderland in the parade, but it all depends on whether or not Six Flags will let them advertise the park. As of right now, I don't know if Canada's Wonderland will ever come back to the parade. I really want to see Canada's Wonderland in the parade again. Hopefully they come back soon, especially by 2031, which is the year of the park's 50th anniversary. But because of how greedy Six Flags is, and because they won't advertise the park and its attractions, I'd say as of right now, the chances of Canada's Wonderland getting a new float in the 2026 parade are highly unlikely. But hopefully this will change in a few years. Next are two places that I feel are very underrepresented in the parade, especially one of the two, and that is the Toronto Zoo and Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. Both of these places need to be represented in the parade more. There are so many things they could do for floats based on both of these places, but both places usually decline offers to have floats in the parade. It's sad because there's a lot of possibilities for animal-themed floats they could have sponsored in the parade over the years. Could you imagine how many self-propelled animal floats the Toronto Zoo would have sponsored in the 80s and 90s? Both of these places have only sponsored one float each in the parade's history, and I feel like they deserve to be in the parade for a lot longer than 1 year. So I think they could come back, but I don't know if they will or not. I'd say the Zoo and Ripley's both have a 50-50 chance of having a float in the parade again. Shoppers Drug Mart hasn't been in the parade since the 2000s, but they've been doing lots of advertising in this decade so far, and they're also one of the largest and most widespread retailers in the country. I think it makes a lot of sense to have Shoppers Drug Mart back in the parade, and I think they have a likely chance of coming back to the parade. Next is McCain Foods. I think McCain deserves more appearances in the parade. I liked their 2024 float, and the inclusion of a screen at the back was a nice addition. I was surprised when I found out they weren't coming back in 2025, because their 2024 float was very popular with the spectators. I feel like McCain could get a new float this year, and if they come back, hopefully their time in the parade lasts longer than their first float. Next is Manulife, Canada's largest insurance company. Manulife was in the parade 3 times from 2018 to 2020, but I don't know if they'll come back to the parade anytime soon, especially because we already have Desjardins Insurance in the parade. But I wouldn't mind seeing Manulife back in the parade, and I'd say they have a good chance of coming back. Next is Zellers. Now, the reason why I'm bringing them up is because recently Zellers is currently going through another revival by opening new standalone locations. The first of these new locations opened in Edmonton in October of 2025, then another location opened in North York, and then another one in Windsor, and there's going to be a lot more Zellers locations on the way. I don't know if Zellers is ready to come back yet because they still have a long way to go to become a top retailer again. But once they open up more locations, I'm sure Zellers will be ready to have a new float in the parade again. Now I'm going to get into the new company possibilities. These are companies that have never participated in the parade before, and I think most of these companies make a lot of sense to have floats in the 2026 parade. First is Rogers. This would be a no-brainer. Rogers owns so many things these days, including City TV, which is the current broadcasting network for the parade, so it would make sense for Rogers to have a float in the parade. I think if Rogers were to have a float, it would have to be something original, because I can't think of any way they could make a float advertising fast internet or mobile devices. And like I said when talking about the possibility of a new CHFI float, it would be nice to see some original ideas in the parade again, and I think if Rogers was in the parade, they could do something like this. Another company that would be a great candidate for sponsoring an original float is Costco. Costco makes a lot of sense. Costco's are popping up everywhere these days. There's so many of them everywhere, and because of how many Costco's are in the GTA, maybe we could get a Costco float in the parade. I feel like it's gonna happen. I think this seems like a very likely possibility. I mean, Costco's are so popular these days, so, I mean, it just makes so much sense to have something that is super popular in the parade. Like, they've done that many times before, so maybe they could do it again with Costco. Okay, this might not make sense at first, but hear me out. Amazon is one of the largest companies in the world, and it's also where a lot of people do their online shopping for the holidays. Most department stores and toy stores are fading away because nowadays everyone's shopping for gifts online, and most people do their shopping on Amazon. So because of this, I think Amazon could end up getting a float in the 2026 parade or a future parade, and I'd say the chances of Amazon having a float are likely. Maybe they could have a factory float with elves working on not just toys, but also other non-toy gifts, because Amazon sells pretty much anything. I feel like this could work if Amazon joined the parade. I don't know if I can see Amazon having a float in this year's parade or not, but I'm certain they will definitely be in the parade at some point soon. But this isn't the only possibility for an Amazon float that I'm talking about, because I have another Amazon possibility that I'll talk about later when talking about possibilities for licensed floats. Next is Chick-fil-A. I think Chick-fil-A does make sense because they're opening a lot of locations in Canada and they're expanding a lot, but at the same time, I'm kind of doubting if they'll get a float or not. It would be cool, but I don't know if it'll happen or not. Seeing Chick-fil-A in the parade would still be pretty awesome either way. Next is Waterfront Toronto. Waterfront Toronto is the official organization of restoring Toronto's waterfront. They've been doing a lot of work on the Portland since the start of this decade. Last year they opened a big new park, and they just expanded it in July with some new features like a basketball tree that lets you dunk like LeBron and free throw like Kobe. And I'm pretty sure they're also building some new buildings on some new plot of land or something. So because of how many projects this group has been working on, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to have a float in the parade. Maybe it could be nature themed and have a park on it like some of the older floats from the 70s and 80s, like the arcade float from 1984, which had a slide that went into Pac-Man's mouth. Maybe they could theme it to that play park project, which they did announce, although I haven't heard any news about it lately, so I'm assuming it's probably cancelled and replaced with the new park. Either way, I think a waterfront float is very likely, and I think we could get one soon. If not this year, definitely next year. Next is Destination Ontario, which is the official tourism organization for the province of Ontario. I've seen them doing a lot of advertising lately, but I don't know how a float from them would work. If they were in the parade, their float would basically be advertising a place that a lot of people watching the parade are already in. So I'm kinda doubting this float. But if Destination Ontario gets a float in the parade, I am interested in seeing what they'll do with it. They could also make it an original float. That would also work. We already know that Pizza Pizza will not be coming back to this year's parade. Their time in the parade is done. But what if another pizza chain joins the parade and becomes their replacement? One of these four pizza chains could potentially replace Pizza Pizza this year, and they are Boston Pizza, Domino's Pizza, Pizza Nova, and Little Caesars. I'd say all four of these chains are big enough to have a float in the parade, especially Boston Pizza, which is the largest, most widespread, and most popular pizza chain in the country. I'd say Boston Pizza is the most likely one of the four. They make a lot of sense, though the other three possibilities could also work. Domino's Pizza has been doing a lot of advertising lately, and they've also been expanding a lot. Pizza Nova is another chain that does a lot of advertising. I hear their jingle on my local radio stations all the time. There's also Little Caesars, which is everywhere in Canada. There's a lot of locations in every province, which makes it big enough to have its own float in the parade. Either one of these pizza chains is possible, and either one could work. I'm surprised the Home Depot has never been represented in the parade. The Home Depot is one of the biggest retailers in the world, and they have a huge selection of Christmas decorations every year, and their decoration selection keeps getting bigger and bigger each year. So if the Home Depot were to get a float, it would definitely be Christmas themed and near the end, which is where a lot of the Christmas themed floats go in the parade lineup. I think a Home Depot float is very likely, and I hope the Home Depot finally gets in the parade soon. Next is Rona, which is the Canadian version of Lowe's. And I think Rona is also a likely candidate, even though I think the Home Depot seems like the more likely and more realistic option. Maybe we could get a Rona float too. Even though their Christmas decoration selection isn't as big as the Home Depot's, I still think they have a likely chance of being in the parade. If Rona gets a float instead of the Home Depot, I won't be mad about it. I'd actually be fine with Rona in the parade, and I wouldn't mind their inclusion at all. Next is Mary Brown's Chicken. Mary Brown's Chicken is almost everywhere across the country, except for Quebec. I don't know why Quebec hates them so much. So their inclusion in the parade does make sense, and I'd say their chances of being in the parade are pretty likely. Next is Starbucks Coffee, which makes sense, but I don't know if I can see Starbucks appearing in this parade or not, considering they've never been in it in the past. But every year they release a collection of Christmas drinks and cups that lots of consumers go crazy for, and there's always lots of people trying to get these limited edition drinks. And plus, Starbucks is one of the biggest and most popular brands in the world, so Starbucks makes sense to have a float in the parade, but I don't know if it'll happen or not. We'll have to wait and see if Starbucks gets a float in the near future. Next is a very popular retail chain around the world, and their products have been going viral on the internet since last year. I am, of course, talking about the creators of the viral Labubus, Pop Mart. I feel like a Pop Mart float featuring the Labubus would be super popular, especially now that they're opening locations in Canada. There's a location in the Eaton Centre, one in the Outlet Mall in Halton Hills, and another one all the way in BC, and they just opened another one at the Sherway Gardens Mall. The Macy's Parade currently has a Pop Mart float featuring giant Labubus, and I can see the Santa Claus Parade doing something similar. I think this one has a 50-50 chance of happening because it all depends on if Pop Mart is interested or not. Next is one of the most popular brands with so many young girls these days, which is Sephora. Ever since 2023, I've seen so many young girls ask for skincare products for Christmas. Today, the average young girl's Christmas wishlist consists of various skincare and makeup products from Sephora, from moisturizers and cleansers to lip oils and bronzers, alongside Stanley tumblers, Labubus, and anything else that's trending on TikTok. And that's because kids of today look up to influencers as their role models, and the influencers that they admire use all these products all the time, which causes these kids to start begging their parents to buy them all of the makeup products that their idols use every day. Since Sephora is overshadowing toy stores, one thing they could do if they want to capitalize off of Generation Alpha's obsession with skincare is make the first ever parade float dedicated to skincare and makeup, which are far more popular than toys in today's standards. When I was a kid, the Santa Claus Parade would always feature toy factory floats with lots of actual mass-produced toys, like Lego sets and Barbie dolls being advertised on them, like the Santa's Workshop and Toyland train floats sponsored by Toys R Us. who, by the way, can't be in the parade anymore because they're going out of business and closing dozens of locations. And that's because most kids don't go to toy stores or play with toys anymore. Instead, they're all at Sephora, and just like me, my sister, and so many people my age when they were kids, always begged their parents to take them to Toys R Us or Mastermind before Christmas so they can write down what they like the most on their wish list. Kids of today do the same thing, except they beg their parents to take them to Sephora rather than Toys R Us. And instead of looking for their favorite toys to add to their wish list, they're looking for their favorite lip masks and skincare kits. I'm surprised Sephora isn't in the parade already because young girls are all about makeup and skincare these days. And because of this, I feel like a Sephora float will probably happen. A float dedicated to makeup and skincare is long overdue, and I think it would be very popular with young girls. Maybe it could have female elves applying the most popular skincare and makeup products that kids are obsessed with to their faces, or they could even add a gay elf if they want to spice things up. Or they could make a castle of cleansers and moisturizers. Childhood is changing a lot, and making a float targeted towards the current young generation of today and what they want for Christmas would be very popular with the kids. And I'd say this possibility has a good chance of happening. Besides, who knows how popular Sephora will still be with kids in a few years. Another brand that is very popular with kids these days is Lululemon. One type of retail company we rarely see in the parade is clothing brands. And because of how popular fashion and clothes are becoming with the younger generations of today, I feel like a Lululemon float is possible. Lululemon is one of the more popular clothing brands with the kids right now, and it's a Canadian brand as the company is headquartered in Vancouver. I'd say Lululemon has a decent chance of making it in the parade. It all depends on whether or not they're interested in having their own float. Next is something that I really hope doesn't happen, and I'm sure the parade committee wouldn't allow this in their parade either, and that is any gambling or betting company. I'm calling all of them out. DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, Bet365, TheScoreBet, Polymarket, Kalshi, all of these gambling companies make me sick to my stomach, and I hope none of them make it in the parade. Luckily, the parade staff are smart enough to not advertise gambling in a kids' parade. Besides, all of these companies have a 0 to 10% chance of being in the parade anyways. Gambling shouldn't even be legalized in the city anyways. This is Toronto, not Las Vegas, damn it. Now onto the possibilities for my favorite kinds of floats in the modern era of the parade. The licensed floats. Generally speaking, the licensed floats are always more popular than the corporate floats, and there are lots of people that want to see more licensed floats in the parade. I have lots of different possibilities for new licensed floats, and I couldn't think of a better character to start this section off than Mario. I think we can all agree that Mario will definitely be in the 2026 parade. Mario is the most popular licensed character to ever appear in the parade. He's appeared on more floats than any other licensed character that has ever appeared in the parade. Mario's floats are always one of my favorites. I'm always more excited to see Mario than Santa. I wonder what they'll do with Mario this year. Maybe they'll bring back the Mario Kart World float from last year's parade, or maybe they'll make an entirely new float. Either possibility could work. Speaking of Mario Kart World, on one hand, I can see them bringing back last year's Mario Kart World float that's supposed to take place on DK Pass, which would be nice because it would make that float the first Mario float to make more than one appearance. But on the other hand, because Mario floats always make only one appearance, I can also see them making a new Mario Kart World float this year. Maybe if they were to make a second Mario Kart World float, they could change the setting and have the float take place on a different course this time, like maybe Mario Bros. Circuit, or Crown City, or Starview Peak, or Sky High Sundae, or one of the more popular courses like Moo Moo Meadows, Toad's Factory, Boo Cinema, or even Bowser's Castle. Maybe they could even have the float take place on Rainbow Road, which I'm surprised we've never seen a Mario Kart float that takes place on Rainbow Road before, especially considering how popular Mario Kart World's Rainbow Road is. Even though DK Pass is my favorite course in Mario Kart World, I think it would be nice to see other Mario Kart World courses get represented in the parade. A Toad's Factory float would go crazy, but I don't know if it's gonna happen or not. It would be really cool though. As for characters, they could add some new characters that weren't on the float last year, like Luigi, Toad, Bowser, who surprisingly has made a lack of appearances in the parade, Donkey Kong, although I have another idea for Donkey Kong that I'll talk about in a bit, Rosalina, Bowser Jr., Wario and Waluigi, Pauline, and of course, the cow from Moo Moo Meadows, my favorite playable character and the game's breakout star. Obviously, they don't have to include all of the characters I listed, but it would still be nice seeing these characters in the parade, especially the cow. It would also be nice hearing music from the game on the float, which last year's float and the other Mario floats from past years didn't have. I feel like adding music from the game would complete the float and add to the float's atmosphere, especially because of how many remixes they made. Like there's so many different like remixes of songs from past Mario and Mario Kart games. Last year's float was amazing, but at the same time, it didn't feel complete without the music from the game. So I really hope they do that, and I think it would be really nice. I feel like a new Mario Kart World float could work, and I think it's possible, but we'll have to wait and see. Another thing Nintendo could do if they don't want to sponsor a new Mario or Mario Kart World float is sponsor a float based on another one of their most popular Switch 2 titles. I think the three best choices for another Switch 2 game in the Santa Claus Parade are Donkey Kong Bonanza, which has been out for a year, Splatoon Raiders, which just came out this summer, and Kirby Air Riders, which released 3 days before the 2025 parade. Either one of these ideas is possible. I'd say Donkey Kong Bonanza is the most likely choice, followed by Splatoon Raiders, and then Kirby Air Riders. If any of these games get represented in the parade, it would be the first time each of their franchises would ever be represented in a major holiday parade. I think it would be awesome seeing either one of these games get represented in the parade, and I think it has a good chance of happening. We'll have to wait and see what Nintendo does for this year's parade. Next is the first movie on this list, and it's a movie that makes a lot of sense to have a float in the parade, and that is the upcoming Cat in the Hat movie starring Bill Hader as the titular character. I think a Cat in the Hat float makes a lot of sense to be in the parade, because there's so many things they could do with the Cat in the Hat float. They could have the cat driving the couch machine with the kids and the fish on board. They could have the things pop up all over the float. They could recreate one of the imaginary scenes from the movie where the cat takes the kids to a world made of their memories. I think this movie looks great, and it has everything you would want in a movie targeted at kids, from the vibrant colors, to the energetic characters, to all of the imaginary scenes brought to life through computer animation. I think kids are going to love this movie, and I'm sure so many of them would love to see a Cat in the Hat float in the parade. And the Cat in the Hat has a good shot at being in the 2026 parade. Another movie with a very likely chance of being in the 2026 parade is Jumanji Open World. For those of you that aren't familiar with this parade, let me explain. Back in 2017, the parade team made a float that promoted the movie Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, which starred The Rock, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, and Karen Gillan. This float was very popular with the spectators, and it made them want to see the movie in theaters. With the third installation in the Jumanji movie trilogy, Jumanji Open World, releasing in theaters this Christmas, I think there's a good chance we'll get another Jumanji float in the 2026 parade. Now I know what you're thinking, but aren't the Jumanji movies PG-13? Well, yes, but the parade has featured some floats based on PG-13 movies in the past, like Welcome to the Jungle along with Bumblebee, but this parade proves that with these floats, even PG-13 movies can have floats in this parade. I think there's a good chance we could get another Jumanji float in the 2026 parade. They already have everything they need to make another one. Maybe they could even recreate the four main characters which weren't on the original float. I think this is a very likely possibility, and it would be great to see Jumanji represented in the parade again. Next is an IP that I really hope gets represented in the parade soon, and that is Bluey. If you think about it, a Bluey float makes so much sense. Bluey is one of the most popular shows around the world with families, including both kids and adults, and when you have something that kids and adults can both enjoy together, it evaluates the perfect formula for a float in the Santa Claus Parade. Also, unlike a lot of kids shows these days, Bluey can actually be enjoyed by older audiences too, in addition to kids. While most kids shows nowadays are always fast-paced with bright colors and overstimulation, Bluey is a lot calmer and it allows viewers to enjoy what they're seeing at a moderate pace. It also comes with lots of heartfelt and emotional moments, and many funny moments, including some jokes and references that only adults will understand. It's also a lot better at teaching lessons than most kids shows, and unlike the basic stuff most kids shows educate kids on, Bluey teaches valuable life lessons in a civil and respectful manner through the stories that are being told in each episode. I've been a Bluey fan since 2022, and I always watch Bluey whenever I'm feeling down, and it cheers me up every time. It's a great show to watch whenever you want to feel happy, and that's why so many teens and adults relate to this show, because adult life can be hard and sometimes it can be difficult to find something that can put you in a good mood, and Bluey always exceeds at making people of all ages happy. I'm surprised Bluey isn't in the parade already, because it's been one of the most popular shows since the start of this decade. Bluey's already in the Macy's parade, so why not have her in the Santa Claus parade too? There's lots of things they could do with the Bluey float. Because of how many activities Bluey's family engages in, the possibilities are pretty much endless. What if Bluey, Bingo, Chili, and Bandit all played Keepy Uppy, or Bluey and Bingo dressed as grannies, which is one of the most popular gags in the show? Or the healers could go on a road trip, or they could go on a Christmas swim, like the Season 2 episode of the same name, because in Australia, which is where the show takes place, Christmas is celebrated during the summer months. Another good reason why a Bluey float makes a lot of sense is because of the Bluey movie coming out in 2027. I really hope a Bluey float happens, and I think Bluey has a very likely chance of being represented in the parade with a float. I'm surprised Bluey isn't in the parade already, because so many people would love to see her and her family in the parade, and if Bluey was in the parade, her float would be so popular. It would be one of, if not the most popular float in the whole parade. So I think Bluey and her family could appear in the 2026 parade, and so many families and fans, including me, would be very happy if the Healer family appears in the parade. Next is a new Paw Patrol float. Even though I'm personally not a fan of Paw Patrol because I'm tired of Nickelodeon milking the franchise to death, and also because I was never a fan of the show, not even when I was a kid. It's still popular with kids today, and it's Canadian content, which makes a new Paw Patrol float twice as likely. If Paw Patrol were to get a new float in the parade, it would make the parade so much money, which they desperately need right now, and nothing screams making thousands of dollars more than Nickelodeon's devotion to Paw Patrol. If a new Paw Patrol float were to happen, I won't be mad about it. I'm too old for that show anyways, but it's nothing for me to complain about. I just wish Nickelodeon would end this show already. But at the end of the day, it's a kids show, and the parade is also for families, so while I wouldn't care for a new Paw Patrol float, the kids would still love it because they're the ones that would want to see a new Paw Patrol float. While I'm not a fan of Paw Patrol, like I said, I still think a new Paw Patrol float could happen, and I won't be surprised if it does. I mean, the last time Paw Patrol was represented in the parade was 2022, so it's been a few years since the last time we got Paw Patrol representation in the parade. Despite this, the show is still ongoing to this day, and Nickelodeon has made a lot of Paw Patrol content, including 3 movies, with one coming out later this month. But if a new Paw Patrol float does happen, I won't complain about it, because why bother? Even though it's not for me, kids will still get excited about it, and that's okay. Next is something that I really hope gets brought back to the parade, and it would make not just kids, but so many adults that grew up with this show happy too. This is another popular preschool show that's also had a long history with the parade, even longer than Paw Patrol, I might add, and I'm of course talking about Sesame Street. It's been 45 years since the last time the Sesame Street Muppets were in the parade, and it's also been almost 50 years since Sesame Street's earliest known appearance in the 1977 parade. And I think there's a good chance they'll finally come back to the parade. It would be nice seeing the Sesame Street Muppets in the parade again, both the ones that have appeared in past parades, like Big Bird, Bert and Ernie, Cookie Monster, Grover, Oscar the Grouch, who actually hosted the CBC's coverage of the 1981 parade along with Sharon Lois and Bram, and the Count, and the ones who have never appeared in the parade before. Of course, there's Elmo, who is the face of modern Sesame Street. He's been the show's most popular character since the 90s and the main star of Sesame Street since HBO bought the show back in 2015. There's also Tango, who is Elmo's puppy, Abby Cadabby, Rosita, Telly, Baby Bear, Julia, who is the first ever autistic Muppet, and the three Culture Muppets, Tamir and Gabrielle, who were introduced in the 2020 special, The Power of We, and Ji Young, who was introduced in the 2021 special, See Us Coming Together. This makes up the main cast of the current Netflix era of Sesame Street, and I think it would be nice to see all of them in the parade together, just like the Macy's parade. If they were to make a new Sesame Street float, they could make it a recreation of the set with the brownstone building alongside other settings from the modern era of the show, like Elmo's apartment, Big Bird's nest, and Oscar's trash can. And they could also add some elements from the Eaton Sesame Street floats, like the seesaws from the late 70s float, and they could have each of the Muppets come out of windows and wave to all of the spectators from inside them. And also, just like the Eaton's floats, they could have all of the Muppet performers play the Muppets live as the float heads down the parade route. As for their sponsors, in addition to Sesame Workshop and Netflix, the float could also be sponsored by the letter S, the letter C, the letter P, and the number 1, because the Santa Claus Parade is number 1. I also have a fun idea for something they could do during the broadcast. Remember when I mentioned Oscar hosting the CBC's coverage of the 1981 parade with Sharon Lois and Bram? What if City TV did the same thing, but with Elmo? I don't know if this would work or not because a lot of kids would be expecting Elmo to ride on the float, but it would actually be really funny hearing Elmo give his own commentary on the floats. They could actually do this with any Muppet from the show. Imagine if Bert and Ernie were the hosts. Now that would be genius. They could also have Abby Cadabby make the parade appear with their magic wand, or Cookie Monster try to eat the Timbits on the Tim Hortons float, or Grover talk about some of the floats and interact with the spectators, or the Count count all of the floats and costumed participants. I'm sure they could find a way to make something happen. I think it would be really nice to see Sesame Street in the parade again, and a Sesame Street float would make people of all ages happy. And the best part is, the kids wouldn't be the only ones that would love seeing the Sesame Street characters in the parade. Many generations of kids grew up with Sesame Street, including me, and seeing characters from their childhood again would bring back memories and make them feel nostalgic. This is another good form of the nostalgia-based strategy that could bring back so many memories for older spectators. My dad actually watched the 1977 and 1978 parades, and he was very young at the time, and he also loved Sesame Street when he was little, so he would always get very excited when he saw the Sesame Street float. He told me he was very ecstatic when he saw Big Bird. And the spectators wouldn't be the only ones enjoying Sesame Street's presence in the parade. Jim Henson and the other original Muppet performers also loved participating in the Eaton's parades, and bringing back the Sesame Street characters and giving them a new float would be a great way of continuing their legacy, especially Jim Henson. In conclusion, I would love to see the Sesame Street residents in the parade again, and I hope they can find a way to bring them back to the parade. If they can't get Snoopy back on the Canada's Wonderland float, but they still want Snoopy to keep making appearances, they could make a float based on the Camp Snoopy series on Apple TV+. As someone who grew up with Peanuts, I would love to see Snoopy in the parade again. I think a Camp Snoopy float would be very popular with spectators of all ages because so many people love Snoopy. I feel like this could work and it makes a lot of sense. Maybe they could have Snoopy and the Beagle Scouts running through the wilderness or engaging in other camp activities, like roasting marshmallows over a campfire. Maybe they could even play some of the songs written for the classic Peanut specials like A Charlie Brown Christmas on loudspeakers. I think a Camp Snoopy float would be a very popular addition to the parade, and it could also promote Season 2 of the Camp Snoopy series on Apple TV Plus, along with the new special Snoopy Presents There's No Place Like Home Snoopy, which also launched on the service this year. I really hope Snoopy's time in the parade isn't up. I think this would be a great way of bringing Snoopy back to the parade, and I think this possibility makes a lot of sense. Here's to hoping Snoopy's journey in the Santa Claus Parade isn't over. Gabby's Dollhouse is another very popular show with the kids right now. Lots of young girls love Gabby's Dollhouse, and seeing Gabby in the parade would get them very excited. With that being said, I don't know if Gabby's Dollhouse will ever be represented in the parade because there's a surprising lack of NBC Universal representation in the parade, with the only Universal float that's ever appeared in the parade's history being the Penguins of Madagascar float from 2014. Aside from that, NBC Universal has been completely ignoring the Santa Claus Parade and choosing not to advertise any of their other movies in the parade. That's why we never got floats based on movies like Flushed Away, The Bee Movie, Madagascar Escape to Africa, Megamind, Trolls, Sing, the Illumination Grinch movie, the Cats movie, which was actually a good thing, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, the Five Nights at Freddy's movies, both the first one and the second one, Trolls Band Together, or Migration, alongside a few others. Even the Wicked movies, NBC Universal's biggest cash cows that they have constantly milked to death, OD'd with 24/7, and advertised literally everywhere on literally everything in 2024, 2025, and still to this day, never got floats in the Santa Claus Parade. Though, this was actually a good thing. I'm actually happy they didn't make floats advertising the Wicked movies, because it meant I could actually watch something that wasn't advertising Wicked for once. That's right, the 2024 and 2025 parades featured zero Wicked representation. Not one Elphaba or Glinda in sight. Even in the commercial breaks, there wasn't a single ad for the Universal equivalent of Frozen. It felt so good watching something that wasn't advertising the Wicked movies for once. Better yet, it felt amazing watching a parade that wasn't constantly shoving Wicked all over my f***ing face. I'm looking at you, Macy's. Anyways, NBC Universal is usually not interested in having their properties represented in the parade, so I'm kinda doubting a Gabby's Dollhouse float. It would be cool seeing a recreation of the Dollhouse, but since NBC Universal doesn't care for the parade and have only sponsored one float in the parade's history, I'd say the chances of a Gabby's Dollhouse float happening are unlikely. Wild Kratts has been around since 2011, and it is still very popular with Canadian audiences. I'm surprised the show has never been represented in the parade either, considering how many ideas they could have come up with for a Wild Kratts float in the past. They could have the Kratt brothers using their creature power and transforming into different animals. I think that would be very cool. Wild Kratts has been popular with kids for so long, so it's kinda surprising they've never been represented in the parade. Even with this possibility being long overdue, I'm still doubting it. It would be cool, but I don't know if it's gonna happen. Next is Spidey and His Amazing Friends. If this show got a float in the parade, it would be the first time Spider-Man would ever be represented in the parade with a float. I'm surprised Spider-Man has never been represented in the parade considering he's one of the most popular superheroes of all time. I'm surprised they never made a float based on Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse in 2018, considering that was the movie that changed animated movies forever. I think if Spider-Man were to be represented in the parade now, his float would have to be based on the Disney Junior series, Spidey and His Amazing Friends, which is very popular with kids. Spidey and His Amazing Friends is another very popular show with the kids right now, and so many kids love Spider-Man, along with Spider-Gwen and Miles Morales, who are also main characters in the show alongside Spider-Man. And a lot of people want to see him in the parade, so I think this possibility makes a lot of sense, but I don't know if I can see it happening yet. It would be very popular, but because there's never any Marvel representation in the parade, not even any Spider-Man representation, I don't know if this will happen, but I think we'll definitely see Spider-Man appear in the parade sometime in the future. Next is Disney's newest animated movie, Hexed, which releases a couple days after the parade on November 25th, starring Haley Steinfeld as Billy Doe, the main protagonist of the film. I'm not sure about this one. While seeing a float based on this movie would be really nice, the parade hasn't worked with Disney in 10 years. Disney's last float in the parade was the Moana float from 2016, and since then, they haven't partnered with the parade again. We never got floats based on any Disney or Pixar movies after that. We never got floats advertising Coco, Ralph Breaks the Internet, Frozen 2, Soul, Encanto, Strange World. Okay, maybe not that one because Disney wasn't even promoting that movie at all. Anyways, Wish, Moana 2, Mufasa the Lion King, which would have been hard for them to do because of how realistic everything is in that movie. So it's actually a good thing that that movie never got a float either. And most recently, Zootopia 2. I'm also kind of shocked Turning Red was never represented in the parade, considering that movie is set in Toronto. So I don't know if Hex will be represented in the parade or not. It all depends on how Disney is promoting this movie and how popular it will be with the general public. I know Disney adults would absolutely go nuts if they made a Hex float, but I don't know how interested kids are in this movie. I'm a bit mixed on this one. While it would be nice seeing the first Disney float in 10 years, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. For now, I'm doubting this possibility, but hey, it could happen. This probably won't happen, but what if they made an Avengers Doomsday float? I think that would be so cool, but I don't know if that'll happen or not. Either way, just imagine you watching the parade, seeing all these fun and happy characters having fun and getting everyone into the holiday spirit, and it's all sunshine and rainbows until all of a sudden Doctor Doom shows up. Imagine the sudden change in tone if Doctor Doom made an appearance, turning Christmas into Doomsday. Yeah, I think it's safe to assume this probably won't happen, because like I said when talking about Spidey and his amazing friends, there's never any Marvel representation in the parade, and I think this movie would be too stressful for kids, but just imagine what it would be like if it was real. Also, Gordon the Gorilla better return in Avengers Doomsday. One movie that is a lot more likely to get a float than Avengers Doomsday is the new Ebenezer movie starring Johnny Depp as the titular character. I feel like this could happen, and this movie has a good shot at being represented in the parade. First of all, it's a Christmas movie, so that makes sense. Secondly, it's being promoted a lot by Paramount, especially when Johnny Depp himself made a surprise appearance at San Diego Comic-Con as Ebenezer Scrooge. And third, it's been a while since the last time we saw Dickens' Christmas representation in the parade, so this would be a good opportunity for the team to finally make a classic Victorian Dickens Christmas scene. Of course, they can't get Johnny Depp to ride on the float because they don't have the money for him, but they could instead get the actor that plays Scrooge in the Shaw Festival's annual production of A Christmas Carol, which is playing in Toronto this year. That would also make a lot of sense. I think the Ebenezer movie has a likely chance of being represented in the parade, and I think they could pull it off. Another Christmas movie coming out this year is the Amazon movie The Man with the Bag, starring Alan Ritchson, who some of you might know as the guy from the movie Playdate, which is a hilarious movie, by the way. And also starring in this movie is the Terminator himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, as Santa Claus. If Amazon doesn't want to advertise their online shop, which they probably would instead, but if they didn't, they could sponsor a float promoting this movie instead, and it would be the second Amazon movie float in the parade following the likes of 2023's Candy Cane Lane. But considering they didn't make a red one float in 2024, I don't know if I can see a float based on this movie happening or not. It sounds awesome, and I'm interested in seeing how an action movie with Santa would turn out. It'll probably be a Christmas version of Playdate, and if it is, count me in. As for whether or not a float based on this movie is likely, I'd say The Man with the Bag probably has a 45% chance of being represented with a float in the parade. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, we'll just have to wait and see. One thing that we never see represented in the parade, despite it being very popular with kids these days, is anime. Anime is so popular with kids these days. And there are three animes that I think are popular enough to have a float in the parade, and they are Dragon Ball, specifically Dragon Ball Super, because that's the current era of the Dragon Ball franchise, One Piece, and Naruto. I think all of these animes each have a good shot at being represented in the parade. Let's start with Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is considered by many to be one of the greatest and most iconic anime franchises of all time. I'm certain there's also not a single person on this earth that doesn't know who Goku is. He's one of the most popular characters in the world. Just imagine how awesome it would be to see Goku in the Santa Claus Parade. Maybe if the parade were to feature a Dragon Ball float, it could feature Goku along with fellow Saiyan warriors, Vegeta and his son Gohan, all in their Super Saiyan forms, fighting one of the classic Dragon Ball antagonists like Frieza, Broly, or Cell, all three of which return in Dragon Ball Super. Can you imagine how hard that would go? If they can't have one of the villains, which they probably won't because villains are never featured in the parade. I mean, just look at Bowser. Bowser's never featured on any of the floats featuring Mario. The float could also feature Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan posing in front of a backdrop of the setting of the series. In my opinion, a Dragon Ball float makes a lot of sense, and it's also the most likely of the three because Dragon Ball has the most upcoming projects to promote, like Dragon Ball Super's return this fall, including the new Dragon Ball Super Beerus series, along with a new Dragon Ball anime called Dragon Ball Super Galactic Patrol, and a couple video games like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, which is very popular with Dragon Ball fans, and a new video game called Age 1000, which releases in 2027. I think a Dragon Ball Super float makes the most sense of the three, but that doesn't mean the other two don't have likely chances of being represented in the parade too, which brings me to One Piece. One Piece is another hugely popular anime around the world about a young pirate boy named Monkey D. Luffy who dreams of finding the ultimate pirate treasure and becoming king of the pirates. This show has a huge fan base, which I am part of, by the way, and if the parade featured a One Piece float, so many One Piece fans would show up to the parade just to see the One Piece float. I mean, Luffy's already in the Macy's parade as a balloon, so the possibility of a One Piece float isn't out there. It could happen. One Piece is one of the longest running anime series of all time since it first premiered in 1999, and over 1,000 episodes have been produced. The franchise also has something big coming up as Netflix just announced a new anime remake of the original manga called The One Piece, which is set to premiere on Netflix in early 2027. Plus, Season 3 of the live-action One Piece series is also coming to Netflix around the same time. Maybe if One Piece were to get a float in the parade, it could have the Going Merry or the Thousand Sunny sailing down the parade route with Luffy and his crew of Straw Hats like Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, and Chopper all on board. A One Piece float would be so popular, and I think it has a good chance of being in the parade too. As a One Piece fan, I would love to see this happen. Lastly, we have Naruto. Naruto has been around since 1999, and the story revolves around a young ninja boy named Naruto who dreams of becoming the leader of his village. Anyone noticing a pattern here? Anyways, this year marks the anime's 25th anniversary since the anime started 2 years after the original manga, and while the manga concluded in 2014 and the anime ended in 2017, Naruto is still one of the biggest and most popular anime franchises of all time. Maybe if Naruto was represented with a float, it could take place in Naruto's village, with Naruto himself on the float along with Sasuke and Sakura. This would also be very popular, especially with Naruto fans of both the anime and the manga. In conclusion, I think the parade's first ever anime float would be awesome to see, and I think it has a good chance of happening. And with how big of an industry anime has become, especially now that it's entered the mainstream a couple years ago, and because of how popular anime in general is with the kids, I feel like it makes a lot of sense to feature an anime float in the parade, and Dragon Ball, One Piece, and Naruto make the most sense. I'd say Dragon Ball is probably the most likely option, with One Piece being a close second behind, but Naruto also has a good chance of being in the parade. We'll have to wait and see. Because generally speaking, I think an anime float would be awesome, and I think an anime float makes a lot of sense, and I can definitely see it happening. Next is another popular show that I'm shocked has never been represented in the parade, and that is SpongeBob SquarePants. A SpongeBob float makes a lot of sense. SpongeBob is another character that needs no introduction. Everybody knows who SpongeBob is. Not only is he one of the most iconic cartoon characters of all time, but there are so many things they could do with a SpongeBob float. Maybe they could recreate SpongeBob's pineapple, Squidward's house, and Patrick's rock, along with the Krusty Krab, if it'll fit. And they could have SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, and Mr. Krabs all on the float. As someone who grew up watching SpongeBob and still rewatches the classic episodes to this day, it's very odd that SpongeBob has never been featured in the parade. He had a good shot at finally appearing in 2025 because of the new Search for SquarePants movie, but he still didn't make it in. I really hope SpongeBob finally appears in the near future. I think there's a good chance we could get a new SpongeBob float in a few years. Maybe not this year, but hopefully in the next couple years we'll finally get to see everyone's favorite sponge appear in the Santa Claus Parade. Next is a Hello Kitty float. This one makes a lot of sense. Hello Kitty has never been in the parade ever, despite her being one of the most popular characters in the world, especially nowadays. She's everywhere in the world of merchandise. She's been featured on so much merchandise, especially in recent years. And Hello Kitty merchandise is so popular with consumers to the point where people are fighting in stores to get them. So because of how popular and marketable Hello Kitty is, maybe they could make a Hello Kitty float in the parade. Maybe it could have Hello Kitty in a fantasy world with some of the other Sanrio characters like My Melody, Kuromi, and Cinnamon Roll, all three of which actually get featured in a lot of merchandise and promotions too. Hello Kitty is the main character that gets the most attention, but Sanrio has been giving lots of their other characters lots of attention lately and giving them their own merchandise too. So maybe they could have Hello Kitty's friends join her on the float, which makes a lot of sense. I think a Hello Kitty float would be so popular, and people would go nuts if Hello Kitty was in the parade. So maybe a Hello Kitty float could happen, and I think there's a good chance that it will. Next is a character that actually makes a lot more sense than you would think, and that is a Grinch float. So you're probably wondering why I'm including the Grinch in this list. Well, I have a few reasons why I think a Grinch float, which we haven't seen in the parade since the 70s, and plus the last time the character made an appearance in the parade was in 2016 on the Indigo Kids float, makes a lot of sense to be in the parade. Number 1, this year marks the 60th anniversary of the 1966 television special. Number 2, next year marks the 70th anniversary of the original book that the special is based on. And number 3, in recent years, the Grinch has been featured on so much merchandise and decorations, so much so that many people think the Grinch is replacing Santa in terms of Christmas consumption. The Grinch's face is everywhere you look when shopping for Christmas decorations. Retailers are slapping the Grinch onto literally everything. We've got Grinch wrapping paper, Grinch stockings, Grinch apparel, Grinch pillows, Grinch plush toys, more Grinch inflatables and Grinch tabletop decorations than ever before, and even Grinch water bottles. I've even seen stores with whole aisles dedicated to the Grinch. So because of the amount of Grinch-themed consumer products retailers have been selling lately, there is a chance the Grinch could get a new float in the parade, and I won't be surprised at all if we get a Grinch float in the 2026 parade. Might as well change the parade's name from the Santa Claus Parade to the Grinch Parade at this point because of how much the Grinch is stealing Santa's spotlight. Ironically enough, the main message of how the Grinch stole Christmas was that happiness, love, and being together matter more than material gifts and commercial goods. The Grinch tried to put an end to consumerism and overconsumption, which is something we see now more than ever in this day and age. And now, the face of an anti-consumerist is being slapped on thousands of consumer products for profits. Oh, how the tides have turned. Okay, I know this might sound stupid at first, and I might get some hate for this, but hear me out. I think a Taylor Swift float makes a lot of sense. In case you didn't know, back in 2013, the 2013 parade featured a One Direction float that promoted their album Midnight Memories, and so many Directioners showed up to the parade just for that float. So this means music artists can have their own floats in the parade too. However, they can't get the actual members to ride on their floats because it would be too expensive to get the artists themselves. Hence why the float featured sculpted replicas of Harry, Niall, Lewis, Liam, and Zayn instead. So if One Direction can have their own float in the parade, Taylor Swift can too, and she makes a lot of sense. Taylor Swift is the biggest pop star in the world. She has a huge fan base, and anything with her face on it always makes millions of dollars. She also always releases an album or major product in the last 3 months of the year, and this is especially common in this decade so far. Taylor released Evermore in December of 2020, Red Taylor's version in November of 2021, Midnights in October of 2022, 1989 Taylor's version in October of 2023. Of course, she had her Eras Tour concerts in Toronto in November of 2024, including one the day before the 2024 parade. And most recently, she released The Life of a Showgirl in October of 2025. And I have a feeling she'll definitely release something later this year. I'm personally not a fan of Taylor Swift or her music. Please don't kill me, Swifties. But I think a Taylor Swift float has a good chance of happening. I'm surprised they didn't make a Taylor Swift float in 2024, considering she was in Toronto at the time, and she even did a concert the day before the 2024 parade. So it was very surprising that they didn't capitalize off of Taylor's Eras tour in the 2024 parade. Also, if CTV still broadcasted the parade, she would have definitely done a broadcast exclusive mid-parade performance from one of her concerts in Toronto. I think even after they missed out on having a Taylor Swift float in 2024, there's still a good chance the 2026 parade will feature a Taylor Swift float. Also, if she had a float, it would attract so many Swifties, and hundreds of Swifties would show up to the parade just to see Taylor's float. Because the thing about Swifties is that they'll always attend or watch anything that either features Taylor Swift, is something that Taylor Swift is also attending or watching, or is advertising Taylor Swift projects. It doesn't matter if the quality is good or not, thousands of Swifties will still flock to see it either way because it has something to do with Taylor Swift or one of her projects. And anything that has Taylor Swift's face on it always makes millions of dollars. People think Swifties always take everything to the extreme, but they're just being dedicated fans. Even if they do some questionable stuff that I won't get into, they're just showing their appreciation for their favorite music artist, and I don't see anything wrong with that. Besides, all music fans are like that. So even though I'm not the biggest fan of Taylor Swift and her music isn't for me, I still think a Taylor Swift float could happen, and I think there's a very likely chance that it will. Next is City TV's flagship series, Hudson and Rex. Since the parade airs on City TV and the parade broadcasters always find a way to insert their programming into the parade, I feel like we might get a Hudson and Rex float. Of all the shows that City TV currently airs at this moment, Hudson and Rex makes the most sense, and the rest of their shows don't make a lot of sense. Besides, aside from Hudson and Rex, the only other City TV shows that I can think of are Breakfast Television, which is already represented in the telecast because all of the hosts are from Breakfast Television, Canada's Got Talent, City News, and various American shows from networks like NBC and ABC. Oh, and also The Simpsons and Family Guy, which definitely can't be in the parade. I feel like unlike all of City TV's other shows, Hudson and Rex actually make sense to get a float in the parade. Not only would it tie into a City TV connection, but it's also rated PG, which means older kids can watch it with parental guidance. The show only has mild violence with no graphic gore, mild profanity limited to minor curse words, nothing explicit, and intense themes, making it suitable for older children, tweens, and teens to watch under parental guidance. So because of this, I think there is a chance that Hudson and Rex could get a float in the parade, and I think it's likely. While it wouldn't be as popular with the general public as a lot of other IPs I mentioned earlier, it would still be a nice inclusion. And lastly, this probably won't happen, but I still wanted to include this just for the heck of it, and it's a GTA 6 float. Wow, guys, what a crazy transition. We really went from Cocomelon to GTA 6. I don't think this will happen because GTA 6 is very mature, even though there's lots of kids that want to play GTA 6 when it comes out this November. But here's the thing, GTA 6 has been the most anticipated video game for the past 3 or 4 years, or even longer than that, because I believe some people have been waiting for this game since after GTA 5 came out. November 19th, which is 3 days before the 2026 parade, is going to be a crazy day. No one will be at work or school because everyone will be playing GTA 6 the second it releases. There's going to be fights for it in stores. People are going to rush into their local Best Buy or EB Games like it's Black Friday, all because they want to play GTA 6. Everybody, and I mean everybody, wants to get their hands on this game. It's going to be a bloodbath out there. All for a video game, might I remind you. Besides, the parade has advertised some mature movies in the past, like Jumanji and Bumblebee, which are both PG-13, but GTA 6 is on a whole different level when it comes to maturity. Despite this, however, there are so many kids that are asking for GTA 6 for Christmas. It's going to be the #1 thing on so many kids' wish lists. And if something is popular with kids, of course it has a high chance of appearing in the parade. If the 2026 parade were to feature a GTA 6 float, I'm sure the team could find a way to make a PG GTA 6 float, and all they would have to do would be to remove all of the inappropriate stuff and focus on everything that would be suitable for a kid's parade, like the atmosphere of Vice City and Jason and Lucia doing something fun together that doesn't involve violence, like riding on a jet ski like that one clip in the second trailer. There is one downside to the inclusion of a GTA 6 float, however. It could cause the local gangs to show up to the parade and start shooting it up, and the parade staff does not want the parade to be shut down by the local gangs. So, if they were to make a GTA 6 float, they would have to proceed with caution and hire extra security to make sure the local gangs don't shut the parade down, or they could keep the float a secret so the gangs wouldn't know about the parade and just leave it alone. I don't think a GTA 6 float will happen. It's the most unrealistic choice out of all the ones I talked about. But it would still make sense to make a float based on the most anticipated video game of all time, as long as nothing goes wrong. Despite this, I still don't think a GTA 6 float's gonna happen. There's just no way GTA 6 is going to be represented in the parade. I'm sorry, but I have to speak the truth. GTA 6 is definitely not going to be in the 2026 parade. Before I end this video, I figured this would be a good time to talk about a new series that I'm starting on this channel soon. As you may know, I've been a super fan of the Santa Claus Parade for years, and the parade's incredible floats have inspired me to create my own custom parade floats and design them digitally. I've been wanting to showcase my custom floats on YouTube for a while, and I'm really excited to finally start doing so with this new series. This series will feature me showcasing a lot of my custom parade floats that I've made over the years, not just to show off my creativity, but also to give other float makers or artists ideas or inspiration for some of their own floats and parades. It doesn't matter if you work for a large parade like the Santa Claus Parade or the Macy's Parade or a smaller hometown parade. There's enough inspiration in my floats for everyone. This would be a great way of inspiring others to express their creativity through making parade floats, which is one of my favorite hobbies to do in my spare time, and I'm excited to share this personal hobby of mine with others. So that concludes this video. I'm so excited to see what the Santa Claus Parade team does for this year's parade. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait to see all the new floats they come up with, and I can't wait for November 22nd.